My name is Emily Carter, and I've lived in a sleepy little town in Indiana with my 12-year-old son, Lucas, for most of his life. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and the biggest excitement is the annual fair. That all changed last spring when Lucas started talking about the woods behind our house. It began innocently enough. One afternoon, Lucas came bursting through the back door, his sneakers muddy and his face flushed. "Mom, I saw something weird out there," he said, pointing toward the dense line of trees that bordered our yard. I was stirring soup on the stove and barely looked up. "What kind of weird?" I asked, figuring he'd spotted a deer or a fox. "Eyes," he said, his voice dropping. "Big, glowing eyes watching me from the trees." I turned to him then, raising an eyebrow. "Eyes? Like an animal?" He shook his head, his brown hair falling into his eyes. "No, Mom. They were too high up, like a person standing, but they didn't blink. They just stared." I chalked it up to his imagination. Lucas has always loved spooky stories. Maybe he'd been reading too many horror comics. "Probably just the sunlight reflecting off something," I told him. "You know how tricky the woods can be." He didn't argue, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. That night, though, things got stranger. I was washing dishes when Lucas called me from his room upstairs. His voice was tight, urgent. "Mom, come quick." I dropped the sponge and ran up, my heart thudding. When I got there, he was at his window, staring out into the dark. "Look," he whispered, pointing. I peered out, squinting into the blackness beyond the glass. At first, I saw nothing but the faint outline of trees. Then I caught it, two faint yellowish lights, hovering among the branches. They were steady, unblinking, just as he'd described. My breath caught. "What is that?" "I told you," Lucas said, his voice trembling. "They've been there every night this week." I yanked the curtains shut and pulled him away from the window. "It's probably just some kids messing around," I said, though I didn't believe it. The woods were too thick, too wild for anyone to be out there at night. Still, I locked all the doors and kept the lights on, hoping it was nothing. But the next morning, Lucas found something that turned my stomach. Near the edge of the yard, where the grass met the trees, were footprints. Bare, human-shaped, but too long and narrow, with deep claw-like marks at the toes. I stared at them, my skin crawling. Whatever was out there wasn't human, and it was watching us. It started with the noises. At first, I thought it was just the wind or a branch scraping against the house, but then I heard it again, a low, guttural sound coming from right outside my bedroom window. I froze, straining to listen. There it was again, a soft tapping, like something testing the glass. My skin prickled with fear. I crept to the window and peered into the darkness. The moon cast an eerie glow over the backyard, but I couldn't see anything unusual. Still, the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I yanked the curtains shut and retreated to bed, pulling the covers up to my chin. Sleep didn't come easily that night. The next morning, I found Lucas in the kitchen, his eyes red and puffy. "Did you hear it too?" he asked, his voice trembling. I nodded, trying to keep my own fear in check. "It's probably just an animal," I said, though the words felt hollow. Deep down, I knew it was something more. After breakfast, I went outside to check for signs of what might have caused the noises. That's when I saw them, more footprints, just like the ones Lucas had found before. But these were different. They led right up to our back door, long and narrow with deep claw marks gouged into the wood of the porch. Whatever it was had been inches from our home. I called Lucas over, and his face paled when he saw the prints. "Mom, what are we gonna do?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "We'll figure it out. Maybe we can set up a camera to see what's out there." His eyes widened. "Like a security camera? Do you think that would work?" "I don't know, but it's worth a try. We need to know what we're dealing with." We spent the afternoon rigging an old trail camera I'd kept from our camping days. I positioned it on the back porch, aiming it toward the woods. As the sun set, I double-checked the locks on every door and window, trying to shake the dread that clung to me. That night we went to bed, but sleep was impossible. Every creak of the house made me jump, and I could hear Lucas tossing and turning in his room. The next morning, I rushed to check the camera footage. My hands shook as I played back the recording. For the first hour, there was nothing but the quiet night, trees swaying in the breeze. Then, around 2 a.m., something moved at the edge of the frame. I leaned closer, heart pounding. A figure emerged from the woods, tall, shadowy, with those same glowing eyes Lucas had described. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, as it crept closer to the house. It stopped just before the porch, staring directly into the camera. For a moment, it felt like it was looking right at me. Then it raised a hand. With a long clawed finger, it traced a symbol in the air, a twisted, looping design, like something from a nightmare. I gasped. Lucas had drawn that exact symbol in his sketchbook after one of his bad dreams. I turned to him, his face ashen as he watched over my shoulder. "That's the symbol from my dreams," he whispered. "It means it's coming for us." The symbol on the camera footage was the final straw. Whatever was out there wasn't just watching, it was stalking us, and it knew Lucas had seen it in his dreams. I couldn't ignore the danger any longer. We had to leave. I packed our bags that same afternoon, throwing clothes and essentials into the car with frantic urgency. Lucas helped, his face pale and drawn. He hadn't slept well in days, and neither had I. The house felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in, and the woods loomed darker than ever through every window. As I grabbed the last of our things, a low growl rumbled from outside. My heart skipped a beat. I peered through the kitchen window and saw it. Tall, shadowy, with glowing eyes locked on the house. It stood at the edge of the yard, closer than it had ever been, its clawed hands twitching as if eager to reach us. Lucas, get in the car now," I hissed, seizing his arm. He didn't argue. We bolted for the front door, slamming it shut behind us. The car was just steps away, but the distance felt endless. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the keys, finally jamming them into the ignition. The engine roared to life. As we sped out of the driveway, I stole a glance in the rearview mirror. The figure remained there, motionless, its glowing eyes piercing through the dusk. It didn't chase us, it just watched, as if granting us permission to flee for the moment. We drove for hours, desperate to leave that cursed town behind. I didn't stop until we reached my sister's house in Ohio. There, we collapsed, exhausted but safe. Lucas slept through the night for the first time in weeks, and I managed a few hours, though those eerie eyes flickered in my restless dreams. The next morning, I called a friend in Indiana to check on the house. She found nothing odd, no footprints, no strange sounds. It was as if the entity had vanished when we left. But I wasn't fooled. It was still out there, lurking in the woods, waiting for someone else to claim. We never went back. I sold the house remotely, hinting to the realtor about the woods, though I knew she'd brush it off. Lucas and I settled in a new city, far from Indiana. He's improving, but sometimes I catch him staring out the window, tense as if expecting those eyes to reappear. I'm not convinced we're free. That symbol Lucas drew, mirrored by the creature's gesture, is burned into my memory. I've since found it in old books, tied to ancient forest spirits that mark those who trespass. We may have escaped for now, but I fear it's only temporary. I keep a bag packed just in case.
This is a true story sent to us by Sarah Mitchell, a 28-year-old graphic designer from Chicago. She reached out to share the unsettling events that began after she moved into a historic apartment building in the heart of the city. What follows is her account, in her own words.
My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a graphic designer living in Chicago. Last fall, I moved into a historic apartment building downtown. The rent was a steal for the location, though the place screamed old, creaky floors, drafty windows, and a faint, musty scent. The landlord called it character. I called it a fixer-upper. Still, after years of roommates, I was ecstatic to have my own space. The first few days were quiet. I unpacked boxes, arranged my desk by the window, and settled in. The building felt oddly still, though. I rarely saw neighbors, and when I did, they'd flash tight smiles and hurry off. I shrugged it off. City life, I thought. Everyone's just busy. Then the footsteps started. Every night around midnight, they thudded from the apartment above mine. Slow, heavy, pacing back and forth. At first, I brushed it off as a restless neighbor. Old buildings creak, right? But the sound was relentless, dragging on for hours until I'd fall into uneasy sleep. One night, I'd had enough. I grabbed my robe and stormed upstairs to apartment 4B. The hallway was dim, the wallpaper curling at the edges. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked harder. Still silence. Annoyed, I turned to leave when the door creaked open an inch. "Hello?" I called, squinting into the dark. No response. A stale smell drifted out. Damp wood and old paper. I nudged the door wider. "Anyone home?" Nothing. I stepped inside, switching on my phone's flashlight. The beam swept across an empty room. Bare walls, dusty floors, no furniture. My stomach dropped. If no one lived here, what was walking around? I backed out, heart racing. Maybe it was pipes or the building settling. But as I hit the hallway, the door slammed shut with a bang that echoed. I yelped, spinning around. The air turned frigid, and a whisper grazed my ear. "Leave!" I didn't wait. I ran downstairs, locking my door behind me. My hands trembled as I pressed against it, breathing hard. The footsteps started again overhead, louder, mocking me. Sleep didn't come that night. Every creak set me on edge. At dawn, I decided to investigate. At the library, I dug up old newspapers about the building. One headline froze me. "Tragic fire claims lives in downtown apartment. Sole survivor institutionalized." Dated 1923, it described a blaze in this very building. The survivor, Clara, had lived in 4B. Found wandering the halls, she'd rambled about, voices in the walls. Records said she never left, not even in death. My blood ran cold. Clara's apartment was above mine, and whatever she'd heard in those walls, I think I just met it. After learning about Clara's tragic past at the library, I couldn't escape the nagging sense that her spirit lingered in the building. The nightly footsteps persisted, now joined by faint whispers, too muffled to decipher, yet insistent, like a voice struggling to pierce through a dense mist. I needed answers, and I wasn't about to find them by fleeing. I resolved to return to apartment 4B, this time in daylight, hoping the sun would dull the terror. The door, still unlocked, groaned open with a push. The room was as barren as before, but a metallic glint caught my eye, winking from a crack in the floorboards. Kneeling, I pried the board free. Nestled beneath was a tarnished locket, its chain coiled and caked with dust. I lifted it, brushing away the dirt. The heart-shaped pendant bore delicate floral etchings. Clicking it open, I found a faded photograph of a young woman with bright, hopeful eyes. Clara, I presumed. Tucked behind the image was a fragile slip of paper. I unfolded it with care. In shaky script, it read, "They won't let me leave." A shiver raced through me. Who were they? The voices Clara had once spoken of? I slipped the locket into my pocket, resolved to dig deeper. That evening, I headed to the local historical society, seeking more about the building's history. The archivist, an older man with thick glasses, frowned as I recounted my findings. "The fire of 1923 was devastating," he said, retrieving a file. "But there's more. Clara wasn't the only survivor at first. Her brother Edward escaped too. He was institutionalized later, though his records are sealed." My pulse quickened. "Sealed? Why?" He shrugged. "Privacy laws, likely. But there's a whisper that Edward knew something about the fire, something that unhinged him. I left with a swirl of new questions. That night, the whispers sharpened, teetering on the edge of clarity. Lying in bed, I strained to hear. Then, unmistakable words cut through. Find Edward. I shot upright, heart pounding. Was Clara reaching out? Did she need me to locate her brother? The next day, I hunted for Edward's trail. Records from that time were patchy, many lost or ruined. But persistence paid off. Edward had been moved to a mental institution in Wisconsin, where he died in 1955. I contacted the institution's archives and, astonishingly, gained access to his file. A week later, a package arrived. Inside was a hefty folder, medical notes, personal writings, and eerie drawings, twisted figures with hollow eyes, flames swallowing a building, and a repeated symbol, a jagged-edged spiral. The last page stopped me cold. It was a letter from Edward to Clara, penned just before his death. "I'm sorry," it read. "I couldn't stop them. They're still here, in the walls, waiting. Don't let them take you too." As I finished reading, the air in my apartment turned icy. The whispers swelled into a chaotic chorus. I whirled around, and there she was. Clara's ghostly figure shimmered in the faint light, her eyes wide with dread, her lips moving silently. Suddenly, the locket in my pocket flared hot, scorching through the cloth. I pulled it out, wincing. Clara's ghost pointed to it, then to the wall behind me. I turned, and the wallpaper began to curl back, exposing a hidden door etched with the spiral from Edward's sketches. The door eased open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase plunging into the building's depths. Clara's apparition gestured for me to follow, her face desperate. Fear gripped me, but I knew retreat wasn't an option if I wanted this to end. With a steadying breath, I gripped the locket and stepped through, descending into the unknown. The hidden staircase descended into a void of shadows, each wooden step groaning beneath my feet. The air turned frigid as I went deeper, laced with a faint metallic tang, old blood perhaps, or something more sinister. Ahead, Clara's ghostly figure floated, her pale luminescence casting flickering shapes across the damp walls. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I gripped the locket tighter and followed her. At the base of the stairs, a narrow hallway stretched out, its peeling wallpaper curling like dead skin under the dim, stuttering lights. Clara stopped at a door at the far end, her translucent hand gesturing toward its rusted handle. My throat tightened, but I forced myself forward and shoved the door open. The room beyond was small and windowless, its walls scratched with wild, jagged spirals, the same eerie symbol I'd seen in Edward's drawings. In the center stood a stone pedestal holding a dusty, leather-bound book. Clara's ghost hovered beside it, her mournful eyes fixed on me. I stepped closer, brushing away cobwebs that clung to my fingers. The book's cover read, "The Binding," in faded gold letters. As I lifted the cover, a gust of icy wind swept through the room, and the whispers that had plagued me for weeks erupted into a deafening chorus. The pages were a grim ledger, names, dates, and cryptic incantations outlining a ritual to imprison spirits within the building's very walls. My hands shook as I reached the final entry. Clara and Edward Thompson, bound to the hollow, 1923. The fire hadn't been an accident. It was a sacrifice, a grotesque attempt to lock souls into the structure. But the ritual had gone wrong, leaving Clara and others trapped, their pain seeping into the bones of the building for decades. Clara's form wavered, her glow dimming. "Free us," she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the swelling noise. I flipped through the book, searching for a way to undo the curse. On the last page, in a frantic scrawl, I found it. A counter-ritual. To release the bound, the keeper must willingly take their place. Dread coiled in my gut. The keeper? Was that me? I looked at Clara, her gaze a mix of desperation and grief. "Is there another way?" I asked, my voice breaking. She shook her head, her image flickering like a candle in the wind. "Please," she pleaded, "end this." The room trembled, dust cascading from above. The whispers sharpened into screams, tearing at my sanity. I had a choice: free them and risk damning myself, or walk away and leave them to suffer. Then I remembered Edward's letter to Clara, his regret for not stopping them. He tried to fight the curse and failed. I wouldn't make the same mistake. I seized the book and began reciting the counter-ritual. The ancient words felt heavy on my tongue, but I pushed through, my voice rising over the chaos. The walls shuddered, and the spirals blazed with a ghostly light. Clara reached out, her cold fingers grazing mine. "Thank you," she murmured as the glow intensified. A thunderous crack split the air, and the room erupted in blinding white. I threw up my arms, expecting oblivion. When the light faded, silence reigned. The suffocating pressure was gone. The book dissolved into ash in my hands, and Clara had vanished. I staggered back up the stairs to my apartment. The hidden door snapped shut behind me, merging seamlessly into the wall. The whispers were silent, replaced by a strange, fragile peace. That night, I slept deeply, untroubled by nightmares. But when I awoke, a note lay under my door, penned in delicate antique script. "You are the keeper now. Guard them well." My breath caught. The ritual hadn't freed me. It had tethered me to the building, to the spirits I'd sought to save. I was bound, just as Clara had been. Or maybe not. I stared at the wall where the door had been. It stayed closed, but I knew it was there, hiding its secrets. Perhaps I could still find a way to break the cycle entirely. For now, I'll stay, I'll study, and one day I might free us all.
My name is Astrid, and I'm 24 years old. A few weeks ago, I moved to a small town in Norway after inheriting my grandmother's old house. It's a remote spot, tucked between jagged mountains and a glassy fjord, where the winters stretch long and dark. I'm a graphic designer, so I can work from anywhere, and I thought this move would be a fresh start, maybe even spark some creativity with the wild scenery. But now, I'm not so sure. The house is ancient, built over a century ago from weathered wood, with a steep roof to shrug off the snow. It groans in the wind, like it's alive, and there's a heaviness to it I can't explain. My grandmother used to tell me stories about this place when I was little, tales of hidden rooms and whispers in the walls. I thought they were just bedtime stories, silly things to make me giggle. Now that I'm here, living in her creaky old home, those memories feel different. Less like fairy tales, more like warnings I didn't heed. I've been unpacking for a week, settling into the quiet. The town's tiny, barely a few hundred people, and my nearest neighbor is a kilometer away. Everyone's friendly, though. I've already got a routine. Work all day, then grab coffee at the local cafe to chat with folks. It keeps the loneliness at bay. This house, though, it's got a way of making me feel watched, even when I'm alone. At first, it was little things. A picture frame I hung in the living room kept tipping off the nail, crashing to the floor no matter how I fixed it. I blamed the crooked walls. Then there were noises, sharp creaks and thumps from the attic. Old houses settle, right? That's what I told myself. Maybe the wind or squirrels scrabbling up there. It was easy to shrug off. Until last night. I jolted awake, heart slamming in my chest, though I couldn't recall a nightmare. The house was dead silent, but the air felt wrong, thick, cold. I slipped out of bed, barefoot on the icy floor, and checked the locks. Window shut, back door bolted. Everything was fine until I reached the front door. It was wide open. The night poured in, frigid and still, snow glinting under the moon. I know I locked it. I always do. Every night, double-checking because I'm out here alone. I stepped outside, scanning the yard, but there were no footprints, no signs anyone had been there. Just the empty, frozen quiet. I shut the door, locked it again, and crawled back to bed, telling myself I'd messed up, forgotten somehow. But I hadn't. Deep down, I knew it. Something's wrong with this house, and I don't think I'm the only one here anymore. After the incident with the front door, I tried to convince myself it was just a fluke, a lapse in memory maybe. But the unease lingered, like a shadow I couldn't shake. The house felt different now, as if it was watching me, waiting. I started sleeping with a light on, but even that didn't help. The darkness seemed to creep in anyway, pooling in the corners of my room. A few days later, I decided to explore the attic. If there were squirrels or rats up there, I needed to deal with them. Armed with a flashlight and a broom, I climbed the narrow staircase, the wood groaning under my weight. The attic was a dusty maze of old furniture, trunks, and forgotten relics. Cobwebs clung to the rafters, and the air smelled of mildew and something faintly metallic. I swept the flashlight beam across the space, half expecting to see beady eyes staring back at me. But there was nothing, just silence and dust. As I turned to leave, I heard it. A faint whisper, like a breath against my ear. I froze, heart pounding. It was so soft, I almost thought I'd imagined it. But then it came again, a murmur too quiet to make out, as if someone was speaking just out of earshot. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" The whisper stopped abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. I backed toward the stairs, the broom clutched tightly in my hand. Maybe it was the wind, I told myself, or the house settling. But deep down, I knew better. There was something up here, something that didn't belong. That night, the whispers returned. I was in bed, trying to read, when I heard them again. Soft, indistinct voices coming from the walls. I pressed my ear to the plaster, straining to make out the words, but they remained elusive, like a distant conversation in a language I didn't understand. The more I listened, the more they seemed to surround me, growing louder, more insistent. I bolted upright, throwing off the covers. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice echoing in the empty room. The whispers ceased instantly, as if startled by my outburst. I waited, breath held, but the silence was absolute. It was like the house was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. The following morning, I decided to ask around town about the house's history. Maybe there was a rational explanation for what was happening. Old pipes, faulty wiring, anything. At the cafe, I struck up a conversation with an elderly woman named Ingrid, who had lived in the town her entire life. "My grandmother's house," I began, stirring my coffee nervously. "Do you know anything about it? Any stories or rumors?" Ingrid's eyes narrowed slightly, and she leaned in closer. "Ah, the old Nilsson place. Yes, there are stories. Some say it's haunted, you know, by the spirits of those who died there." A chill ran down my spine. "Died there? Who?" "During the war," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There was a tragedy. A family lived there, parents and 2 children. One winter, they all perished. Some say it was the cold, others say something else, something darker." "What do you mean?" I pressed, my heart racing. Ingrid glanced around, as if afraid someone might overhear. There were rumors of strange happenings before they died. Noises, voices, things moving on their own. The townsfolk thought the house was cursed. After the family passed, no one wanted to live there. Your grandmother was the only one brave enough to take it on. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over me like a shroud. Did she ever mention anything unusual? Ingrid shook her head. Not that I recall, but she was a private woman, kept to herself mostly. If she experienced anything, she didn't share it with the likes of us. I thanked Ingrid and left the cafe, my mind reeling. Was it possible that the house was haunted by the spirits of that tragic family? And if so, why were they making themselves known to me now? That night, I couldn't sleep. The whispers had returned, louder this time, more urgent. They seemed to be coming from the attic again. Gathering my courage, I crept up the stairs, flashlight in hand. The attic was as I'd left it, dusty and still. But as I stood there, the whispers grew clearer, forming words I could almost understand. "Help us," they seemed to say. "Trapped, cold, so cold." My blood ran cold. I backed away, stumbling down the stairs, and locked myself in my bedroom. The whispers followed me, seeping through the walls, filling the air with their plaintive cries. I pulled the covers over my head, praying for morning to come. But deep down, I knew that whatever was in this house wasn't going to let me go that easily. The spirits were reaching out to me, and I had a sinking feeling that they wanted something only I could provide. The whispers didn't stop. They followed me everywhere, through the halls, into my dreams, even outside when I tried to escape the house for a walk by the fjord. It was as if the spirits had latched onto me, their cold presence seeping into my skin. I barely slept anymore. Every night, I'd lie awake, listening to the murmurs, wondering if they'd ever leave me alone. But it wasn't just the whispers now. Things had started moving on their own. I'd leave a book on the table, only to find it on the floor when I returned. Doors I'd closed would creak open behind me. Once, I watched a teacup slide across the kitchen counter, slow and deliberate, before shattering on the tiles. My heart hammered in my chest as I swept up the pieces, telling myself it was just the house shifting, but I knew better. I needed answers. If the spirits were trying to communicate, maybe there was something in the house that could help me understand. I remembered Ingrid mentioning a family who died here during the war. Perhaps they'd left something behind, a clue to what they wanted. I decided to search the attic again, more thoroughly this time. The space was cluttered with old furniture and boxes, but I was determined. I spent hours digging through dusty trunks, finding nothing but moth-eaten clothes and yellowed newspapers. Just as I was about to give up, I spotted a small, leather-bound book tucked behind a broken mirror. It was a diary, the pages brittle with age. The handwriting was faded, but I could make out the name on the first page. Elsa Nilsson, 1942. My breath caught. This must have belonged to one of the family members who died here. I flipped through the entries, my hands trembling. Most were mundane, notes about the weather, the war, daily life. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. The voices started last night, soft at first, like a distant conversation, but they're getting louder. I think they're coming from the walls. Papa says it's just the wind, but I know it's not. There's something in this house, something that doesn't belong. I slammed the diary shut, my heart racing. Elsa had heard the whispers too, all those years ago. What did it mean? Were the spirits the same ones who had haunted her family? And if so, why were they still here? That night, the activity escalated. I was in the living room, reading Elsa's diary by the fire, when I felt it. A cold, unseen hand brush against my cheek. I gasped, jumping to my feet. The air grew frigid, and the fire flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadowy figure, tall and indistinct, standing in the doorway. I froze, too terrified to move. The figure didn't approach, but I could feel its gaze, heavy and malevolent. Slowly, it raised a hand, pointing toward the attic. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, leaving me alone in the dim light. My legs shook as I stumbled to the couch, clutching the diary to my chest. The spirits weren't just whispering anymore. They were showing themselves, reaching out, and they wanted me to go back to the attic. But why? What was up there that they needed me to find? I didn't want to go. Every instinct screamed at me to leave the house, to run and never look back. But something held me in place, a pull I couldn't explain. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something darker, something the spirits had planted in my mind. Either way, I knew I couldn't ignore them any longer. Tomorrow, I'd go back to the attic. I'd find whatever it was they wanted me to see. But deep down, I feared that once I did, there'd be no turning back. I couldn't ignore the spirits any longer. Their whispers had morphed into desperate pleas, and the shadowy figure's silent command rang clear: go to the attic. Whatever they needed me to uncover was up there, hidden in the dust and shadows. With no other choice, I had to face it. The next morning, I ascended the attic stairs, my pulse racing with each groan of the ancient wood. The air felt colder than ever, and the whispers swirled around me, guiding my steps. I shoved aside boxes and old furniture, searching for a clue, something to explain the madness I'd stumbled into. Then I found it. A small, concealed door tucked behind a pile of crates, nearly invisible against the wall. The spirits' voices surged as I approached. With shaky hands, I pushed it open and stepped into a cramped, forgotten room. Dust blanketed everything, and in the center stood a weathered wooden chest, its lock rusted shut. Using a crowbar from the shed, I forced it open. Inside lay a stack of brittle letters and a silver locket. The locket held a faded photo of a family, 2 adults and 2 children, their expressions grim. The Nilsson family, I assumed, but the letters told a darker tale. Written by Elsa's father, they chronicled the family's terror. Whispers, objects shifting on their own, shadowy figures, mirrors of my own experiences. He revealed they'd disturbed an ancient burial site while expanding the house, awakening a curse that bound their souls here. But the truth cut deeper. The spirits weren't the Nilssons. They were something older, more sinister, wearing the family's faces to deceive me. The last letter froze my blood. They need a vessel, a living soul to take their place and set them free. We tried to escape, but it was too late. Now we're trapped, forever. Horror sank in. The spirits weren't seeking help. They'd lured me into a trap. The whispers exploded into a deafening roar, and the room turned frigid. I whirled around, but the door had vanished, replaced by solid wall. Shadows writhed in the corners, forming tall, featureless figures with claw-like hands. They reached for me, their touch burning cold. I tried to scream, but the air choked me silent. The figures closed in, their voices thundering. "Thank you for setting us free." When I woke, I was in my bed, sunlight spilling through the window. For a fleeting second, I thought it was a dream. But then I felt it, a weight in my chest, a presence not my own. I glanced at the mirror and stifled a gasp. My reflection stared back, but my eyes were hollow, black as the attic's shadows. The spirits hadn't just escaped, they'd claimed me as their vessel. Now I'm bound to this house, like the Nilssons before me. And as I sit here, their whispers fill my mind, urging me to warn you, stay away, or join us.
This account comes from Daniel Carver, a 34-year-old former park ranger from the Pacific Northwest. He contacted us to share the inexplicable events that began after he was assigned to patrol an abandoned stretch of forest known as Hollow Ridge. What follows is his story, recounted in his own words.
My name is Daniel Carver, and I used to be a park ranger. Last spring, I was stationed at Hollow Ridge, a forgotten patch of forest in Washington state. The place had a reputation. Rangers avoided it, whispering about missing hikers and strange lights. I didn't believe in ghost stories. That changed fast. The first day, I hiked in alone. The trees loomed tall, their branches clawing at the sky, blocking out the sun. Every step echoed, the crunch of leaves too loud in the stillness. I felt eyes on me, but the woods were empty. My radio crackled with static, even though I hadn't touched it. By noon, I found the old cabin. It was a ranger outpost, abandoned decades ago, its windows shattered, roof caving in. I stepped inside, and the air turned frigid. A metallic tang hit my nose, blood, faint but unmistakable. The walls were scratched with jagged lines like something had clawed its way out. I set up my gear, ignoring the unease. Night fell, and the forest went silent. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Then came the hum, a low, vibrating sound that pulsed through the ground. My flashlight flickered, casting shadows that twisted into shapes. Long limbs, eyeless faces. I blinked, and they were gone. Sleep was impossible. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. A scream, human but warped, tearing through the darkness. I grabbed my rifle and stepped outside. The hum grew louder, rattling my teeth. Something moved in the trees, a silhouette too tall, too thin, darting between trunks. I called out, my voice swallowed by the night. The air thickened, pressing against my chest. Footprints appeared in the dirt, bare, human-like, but with extra toes, stretching toward me. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The scream came again, closer, splitting my skull. Inside the cabin, I barricaded the door. The hum turned into whispers, my name, over and over from every direction. The windows rattled, glass cracking under invisible hands. I aimed my rifle at the door, sweat dripping into my eyes. A shadow loomed outside, its edges blurring, growing. The door buckled inward, wood splintering. I fired, the shot deafening, but the shadow didn't flinch. It seeped through the cracks, a black mist with glowing slits for eyes. My breath froze in my lungs. The whispers became a roar. "You're ours!" And the mist lunged. I blacked out. When I woke, dawn was breaking, the cabin silent. My rifle was gone, claw marks gouged into the floor. The footprints circled where I'd lain, impossibly deep. I ran, leaving everything behind. But the hum followed me, faint, persistent, promising I'd never escape. I woke with a jolt, sprawled on the cabin's cold floor. My body ached, but my mind screamed louder, replaying the horrors of last night. The blood-curdling screams, the shadowy figure, the whispers that wouldn't stop. I couldn't stay here. I had to escape Hollow Ridge. Now. I grabbed my backpack, shoving in my gear with shaking hands. No time for food, no time for second thoughts. I stumbled outside, the morning air sharp against my skin. The forest looked almost peaceful in the daylight, but I wasn't fooled. I hit the trail, boots pounding the dirt, aiming for the main road. But the path betrayed me. It twisted, doubled back. I passed the same crooked tree, its bark gouged like a wailing face, 3 times. My compass was useless, the needle spinning like a top. Sweat stung my eyes as panic sank its teeth in. The forest was moving, folding in on itself, trapping me in a loop I couldn't break. Hours dragged on. My legs screamed for rest, my lungs burned, but every step brought me back to the cabin. It loomed ahead, taunting me. The forest wasn't just alive, it was hunting me. I collapsed against the door, chest heaving, as a low hum rumbled through the ground. It vibrated up my spine, a cruel laugh from the earth itself. I couldn't give up. There had to be a way out. I tore through the cabin, searching for anything. A map, a hint. Shelves yielded dust, drawers were empty. Then I saw it. A loose floorboard by the fireplace. I pried it up with my knife, revealing a hidden nook. Inside was a journal, its leather cover cracked, pages yellowed and fragile. Thomas Hale, 1952, was scratched on the first page. Another ranger, posted here long ago. My gut twisted as I skimmed his words. June 15th, the hum started. Like the forest is alive. June 18th, saw a shadow, tall, thin, it melted into the trees. June 20th, whispers now, they know my name. June 22nd, trails loop, I can't leave. June 23rd, it's watching, hungry. The last entry ended in a smear of dark brown, blood with a scrawl, it's here, run. Hale's fate mirrored mine, and he hadn't made it. The air turned icy, heavy. Whispers slithered around me. You're ours now. I whirled toward the window. There it was, the shadow, closer, its glowing eyes searing into me. I grabbed the journal and ran, bursting into the woods. Branches clawed my face, roots tripped me, but I kept going. The hum chased me, deafening now. Then the ground dropped. I fell, tumbling into a ravine, pain exploding in my leg. Gasping, I looked up. A skeletal hand reached from the dirt, frozen in a plea. Above it, a stone bore a carved spiral, the symbol from my dreams. The hum stopped. Silence pressed in. I'd found something, or it had found me. I stared at the skeletal hand jutting from the soil. its bony fingers grasping at the air as if desperate to break free. Above it, the spiral symbol etched into the stone pulsed with a faint, sickly glow. The eerie hum that had haunted me since entering Hollow Ridge had vanished, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against my ears. My leg ached from the fall into the ravine, but I forced myself up, hobbling toward the stone. The moment my fingers brushed the spiral, a shock of ice surged through me. My vision blurred, and images flooded my mind. Rangers like me, lost in these woods, their faces contorted in fear. Thomas Hale, the missing ranger, his eyes wild with insanity as he scribbled his last words. And before him, countless others, hikers, settlers, even ancient tribes, all lured to this grove, ensnared by the forest's curse. The spiral wasn't just a mark, it was a chain, binding souls to this wretched place. A shadow loomed from the trees, its shape sharper now, towering over me. Its eyes glowed like dying coals, and its voice slithered into my thoughts. "You've found the heart of the hollow. Now, you must choose." "Choose what?" I rasped, my throat parched and raw. "Stay and join us, or take our place and let us go." I staggered back. The journal I'd found, Hale's journal, had hinted at this. The forest's spirit demanded a soul to sustain its curse. Hale had resisted, and it had claimed him anyway. That skeletal hand was his, I realized, his final, futile cry frozen in the earth. The shadow advanced, its presence choking the air. "Decide, or we will decide for you." Panic clawed at me. I couldn't stay, couldn't let myself become another ghost in these woods. But freeing this thing to roam beyond the forest wasn't an option either. There had to be a way out. Then it hit me, the journal's final page, smeared with blood. "It's here. Run." Hale hadn't escaped, but maybe he'd left a clue. I yanked the journal from my pack. The shadow hissed, its form rippling as if it sensed my plan. Flipping to the last page, I found a rough map, maybe a path to safety, maybe something more. In the margin, a faint sketch of the spiral stared back at me, crossed out with a single jagged line, a cancellation, a way to break the binding. "Show me how to end this," I said, thrusting the journal toward the shadow. It recoiled, its edges flickering. "You cannot. The hollow must have its keeper." Knife in hand, I lurched toward the stone. If the spiral anchored the curse, destroying it might set us free. I carved into the symbol, slashing deep lines to ruin its shape. The ground quaked, and the shadow shrieked, its voice tearing through the air. "Stop! You'll doom us all!" I didn't stop. I hacked until the spiral was a mangled scar. A thunderous crack split the silence, and the earth beneath me fractured. The shadow lunged, but I ducked, clawing my way up the ravine's edge. Behind me, the grove imploded, swallowing the stone, the hand, and the shadow in a swirling abyss of black. I ran. The forest blurred past, the hum returning, frantic now, fading fast. The trees seemed to shift, guiding me toward the main road. I stumbled onto the asphalt, lungs burning, and kept going until I reached my truck, miles from that cursed place. I never returned to Hollow Ridge. The forest was cordoned off after reports of landslides, declared too dangerous for anyone. But in the quiet of night, I sometimes hear that hum in my dreams. Soft, distant, beckoning. I wonder if I truly broke the curse, or if I only bought myself time.
This is a true story sent to us by Lily Thompson, a 16-year-old girl from a small town in Oregon. She reached out to share the eerie events that unfolded after she and her family moved into a new house. Below is her account in her own words.
My name is Lily Thompson, and I'm 16 years old. Last summer, my family moved to a small town in Oregon after my parents' divorce. It was meant to be a fresh start, new house, new school, new life. But the moment we pulled up to the house, I felt a knot in my stomach. It was old, with warped wooden floors and faded wallpaper that peeled at the edges. The real unease, though, came from the woods behind it. They were thick and shadowy, stretching out like they could swallow you whole. I've always been the curious type. Too curious, maybe. So, one afternoon, I grabbed my jacket and headed into the woods. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, and sunlight slipped through the branches in thin, golden streaks. I was kicking through the undergrowth when something caught my eye, a flash of metal buried in the dirt. I crouched down, brushed away the leaves, and found an old, rusty key. It was heavy, with fancy designs carved into it, not like any key I'd seen before. I should have left it there, but instead, I pocketed it, thinking it was just a neat find. As I turned to leave, a chill hit me. The woods went dead quiet. No birds chirping, no leaves rustling, just silence, heavy and unnatural. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The house creaked like old houses do, but then I heard something else, a faint scratching, like fingernails on wood. I sat up, my heart racing. It was coming from downstairs. Barefoot, I crept down the steps, avoiding the spots that squeaked so I wouldn't wake Mom or my little brother, Ethan. The sound got louder near the living room, then stopped cold. I flipped on the light. The room was empty, no one there, nothing out of place. Except on the coffee table sat the key. I'd left it in my jacket pocket upstairs. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It felt ice cold, colder than it should have been. I told myself I must have moved it and forgotten, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The next day, I showed it to my best friend, Mia, at school. She's obsessed with creepy stuff and examined it closely. "That's weird," she said. "It looks ancient. Maybe it unlocks something in your house." I forced a laugh. "What? Like a hidden room?" "Maybe," she said, smirking. "Old places have secrets." Her words gnawed at me. That afternoon, I searched the house. Every door, every drawer, even the dusty attic. The key didn't fit anything. Annoyed, I shoved it in a drawer and tried to let it go. But that night, the scratching came back, sharper and louder. Then a whisper, soft, right by my ear, "Find it." I shot up, gasping. The voice had come from beside my bed. Lily couldn't stop thinking about the key. Its cold weight in her pocket felt heavier every day, as if it carried secrets she hadn't yet unlocked. The whisper she'd heard last night, "Find it," rang in her ears, pushing her to act. She decided to dig into the history of her house, hoping it might reveal what the key was meant to open. After school, Lily biked to the town library, a small building stuffed with dusty books and yellowed newspapers. She approached the librarian, a wiry woman with sharp eyes behind thick glasses. "Hi, I'm looking for anything about my house. The old Thompson place on Maple Street," Lily said, trying to sound casual. The librarian's gaze flickered with curiosity. "The Thompson house? Oh, that's a name with stories. Follow me." She led Lily to a corner stacked with local history files and handed her a folder labeled Thompson House. "Take your time, dear. There's plenty in there." Lily settled at a table and flipped through the folder. She skimmed articles about the house's construction in the 1800s and the Thompson family who'd lived there for generations. Then, a headline from 1923 stopped her cold. "Mysterious disappearance at Thompson House." It told of Eliza Thompson, a girl her age, who vanished from the woods behind the house. No trace was ever found, despite massive searches. The article noted Eliza's love for the woods, where she'd often hunted for treasures. A shiver crawled up Lily's spine. The key. Had Eliza left it behind? She kept reading. Another clipping mentioned odd events after Eliza's disappearance, whispers in the halls, shadows in the windows. The Thompsons abandoned the house soon after. Lily's mind raced. The whispers she'd heard, the key's strange pull, it all pointed to Eliza. That night, Lily climbed to the attic, determined to find more. Amid old boxes, she spotted a dusty trunk. Her breath caught as the key slid into its lock and turned with a soft click. Inside were photographs, letters, and a leather diary with Eliza Thompson scrawled on the first page. Lily read late into the night. Eliza wrote of a hidden grove in the woods and a secret friend who'd shown it to her. The final entry, dated the day before she vanished, said, "Tomorrow, my friend will take me to see the hidden world." Lily barely slept, haunted by questions. Who was this friend? What was the hidden world? At dawn, she returned to the woods, searching for the grove. Deep in the trees, she found a clearing with an ancient, gnarled tree. A hollow at its base glinted with something metallic. She pulled out a locked box, and the key fit again. Inside were trinkets and a locket with Eliza's photo. Then a whisper brushed her ear. "Thank you for finding me." Lily spun around. A faint glow materialized into a girl, Eliza, her sad eyes fixed on Lily. "I need your help to find peace," she said. "Will you?" Lily nodded, heart pounding. "Meet me here at dusk," Eliza whispered, fading away. "I'll show you how." As darkness fell, Lily stood alone in the grove, waiting for a ghost's next command. As dusk settled over the woods, Lily stood in the grove, her heart pounding. The air felt thick with anticipation, and the ancient tree loomed like a silent guardian. She clutched the locket she'd found earlier that week, its worn surface cool against her palm. Inside, Eliza's photo gazed up at her with a faint, hopeful smile, a relic of a life long lost. A soft glow flickered at the edge of the clearing, and Eliza's ghost appeared. Her form was more solid than before, her pale dress rippling as if caught in an unseen wind. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, her voice like a breeze rustling through the leaves. "I've been waiting so long." Lily swallowed hard, steadying herself. "What happened to you, Eliza? Who was your secret friend you wrote about in the diary?" Eliza's eyes darkened, shadows pooling in their depths. He was a spirit of the woods, ancient, lonely, and cunning. He promised to show me a hidden world, a place of wonder and magic beyond anything I'd ever known. But it was a trick. He needed a soul to take his place, to free himself from this grove. When I followed him, I became trapped instead. A chill ran down Lily's spine, the weight of Eliza's words sinking in. "So you've been stuck here all this time?" Eliza nodded, her expression heavy with sorrow. "Bound to this grove, unable to move on, but you found my key and my diary. You've given me a chance to break the curse." "How?" Lily asked, her voice trembling despite her resolve. "By returning what was taken," Eliza said. "The spirit stole my locket. It holds a piece of my soul. If you place it back in the hollow of the tree, I can be free." Lily glanced at the locket in her hand, its delicate chain glinting faintly in the fading light. "But what about the spirit? Won't he try to stop us?" "He's weakened," Eliza replied. "He can't leave the grove, and your presence here has stirred the magic, unsettled his hold. But we must be quick." With a deep breath, Lily stepped toward the tree. The hollow gaped before her like a dark mouth, jagged and uninviting. As she reached to place the locket inside, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the clearing. The air turned icy, and a low growl rumbled from the shadows, raising the hairs on the back of her neck. "Hurry," Eliza urged, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. Lily shoved the locket into the hollow, her fingers brushing the rough wood. For a moment, nothing happened, and her heart sank. Then, a blinding light erupted from the tree, searing through the grove. A furious howl filled the air, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. Lily stumbled back, shielding her eyes against the brilliance. When the light faded, the grove was still once more, the oppressive weight lifted. Eliza stood before her, radiant and whole, no longer a faint ghost, but a figure of shimmering peace. "Thank you," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've set me free." Lily smiled, relief washing over her like a warm tide. "What will you do now?" "I'll move on," Eliza said softly, "to whatever comes next. But I'll always remember you, Lily. You gave me peace." With that, Eliza's form began to dissolve, her glow merging with the deepening twilight. "Goodbye," she whispered, her voice fading into the air. And then she was gone. Lily stood alone in the grove, the burden of the key and the locket lifted from her shoulders. The woods felt different now, quieter, lighter, as if they too had been released from a long-held grief. She turned and walked back to the house, her steps steady on the familiar path. That night, for the first time since they'd moved in, the house was silent. No whispers echoed through the halls, no scratches disturbed the walls. Just peace. Lily knew that Eliza's spirit had finally found rest, and with it, so had she. But sometimes, when the wind rustled through the trees outside her window, she swore she could hear a faint, grateful whisper, "Thank you,"